Welcome to Global Investment Voice, your premier podcast for diving deep into the world of investment migration. Are you dreaming of a second or third passport? Then join us as we traverse the globe, exploring the ins and outs of the U.S. EB-5 immigrant investor visa, uncover the secrets of golden visas, and delve into the many residency and citizenship by investment programs. Each episode is packed with exclusive insights from top industry experts. Whether you're an investor, developer, or a visionary entrepreneur, we're here to guide you through the complexities of global investment migration. And who better to navigate this journey with than your hosts, the dynamic legal duo of this industry, Mona Shah and Rebecca Singh. Plus, hear directly from a lineup of global investment migration leaders. So, buckle up and tune in to Global Investment Voice, where your global investment journey begins and expands.
Well, Mona, today we're diving into a topic that may have some raising their eyebrows. I might say, including myself, moving to Russia.
Right. Well, Russia is a beautiful place. Don't you remember when we were in Moscow for the events? I love Moscow. It has to be one of my favorite cities.
Absolutely stunning. I just wish we had the chance to go to St. Petersburg.
I know. And every time we planned St. Petersburg, something happened, and then the war happened. But yeah, so there's a lot to know about Russia. It is a European country, and yes, I'm sure people are raising their eyebrows at this. But we want to address the skepticism head on. And look, we all understand there's doubts that a lot of listeners are likely to have. Interestingly, Rebecca, I've come across a number of students who went to Moscow University. And there was one, I don't know if you remember, who actually opted to stay in Moscow. So perhaps we could sort of talk about that later.
Yeah, I found it interesting that I've known over the years a lot of students go to Russia in general. But yeah, to move and to be an RCBI program, I think that's really interesting. So we have Ilja Belobragin with us, who can shed some light as to why, and against all the odds, why Russia remains an intriguing option for some investors and individuals. Ilja has extensive experience in management, consulting, and tech company leadership. With a career that includes advising on strategic, operational, and organizational projects at McKinsey & Company, Ilja has over 20 years of international experience across Europe, the US, the Middle East, and Russia. His expertise is instrumental in navigating clients through Russia's complex and promising market landscape. Welcome to the show, Ilja.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you so much, Mona.
So, Mona, why Russia and why now?
Good question. Ilja, you're the one with the experience. And hey, let's be really honest right now. Russia is not the first place that comes to mind for most when considering relocation these days. Tell me, what's the most common reaction that you get when you tell clients, hey, I want to move to Russia?
Well, I think that it's, of course, not an obvious choice, right? But I mean, the primary driver of our clients is they want to move out, right? So they are going away from something. And then as they come to us and they tell us the stories that we actually went through everything. And then we ended up that the only natural choice was Russia. We're like, interesting. Yeah. Tell us more, right? And because that's not the obvious choice, right? And what they look for is, I think, a combination of sovereignty, normal society, and I'm just paraphrasing what our clients tell us.
Well, we're going to hit you on this quote unquote normal society in a moment.
Of course.
Go ahead.
Go. I mean, it's like, and I think in combination with some sort of economic growth prospects, especially if we're looking for clients from Europe. They essentially don't see Europe growing anywhere.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. A lot has to do with what's going on in the world right now and the fact that Russia really is part of that pact, which is trying to get rid of the dollar and just make a different nucleus. So I do understand why people might want to move to Russia.
I think that, coming from kind of the Russian perspective, they don't want to really get rid of the dollar at all. I mean, they like the dollar a lot. It's more that they were kind of shoved off from it. So they're like, okay, if you don't want to, well, we'll go on our own. But yes, from the point of sovereignty, we have a lot of clients, for example, that say, well, we want to maybe I don't know, go to Switzerland or go to some of the different other countries, and tell us, well, we thought about it, and we know that if US tells Switzerland jump, Switzerland will tell us how high, right? If US will tell Russia jump, well, probably it's going to receive another answer. Same thing with China, same thing with India. So the four biggest economies in the world, right? The smaller economies, unfortunately, don't have that luxury. They can be easily pushed around for better or worse, for good or bad intention, but that's the reality of the world. And therefore, a lot of our clients when I said sovereignty, that means essentially, well, they want to have a counterbalance to the US in their pocket as well, right? Something that I think Christian at the AMI network likes to talk about. Well, the world is not free, but you can be free if you have several different options, right? Well,
right.
What's the best barbell probably strategies have? A Russian and a US. Because then you have a there's no other way. You can be in both camps.
I have to say the world is changing. I mean, at one point, migration for someone from South Asia was only Canada, UK, US, whereas now it has changed. Obviously, language is a huge factor because of the British Raj in India, the whole of South Asia. I'm to be honest as well, Southeast Asia. English is the dominant language. But I would still say that yes, things have changed. And it all depends moving forward how, comfortable, I suppose, Russia makes it for people like, say, people who are doing crypto and stuff. Don't you think, Rebecca? That's what we're seeing. It's all about who's the most welcoming to crypto people.
Yeah. So I think technology and having Bitcoin has become a huge factor. But I'd like to bring it back to the point, Mona, where you said, with the English language, is that a big factor, Ilya, in people, or if anyone's looking to move to Russia, or is actually Bitcoin cryptocurrency, is that the new language now?
Well, I mean, let me comment on those two things separately. First, about the Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a pilot running at the central bank in Russia currently, and they will probably go through with it, and sooner or later, within maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years, make it legal. But let's not kid ourselves. It will be all the flows to Russia will be managed by the central bank of Russia. So it's like it can be go in and out, but everything will be there is no anonymity in that sense. That's how the Russian government will play it, and that's kind of how it's going to be. That's what we hear. But it's coming. It's not done yet, but it's coming. Regarding the Russian language, I think that it's very much depends on what you do. So, for example, we have some clients that are moved all the way from San Francisco, California. I mean, like some very interesting startup guys. And they absolutely love it in Moscow. I mean, they wake up, they go to the gym, they take it easy, and then the clients wake up in San Francisco and they just kind of do the whole business online. They have staff all around the world, and they are kind of living their dream life in Moscow. I don't think they need much Russian, really. I mean, they get by in English just fine. But of course, they kind of pick up some Russian as you kind of integrate into the culture. You want to talk to the girls, probably. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking.
Seems like what I'm doing here. I wake up 5 hours ahead of the US, kind of get it going. So I can see that. But so you're saying that to move to Russia, there's no language. You don't necessarily have to speak Russian.
No, but of course, if you plan to work with something that is kind of very probably more Russian industry, I don't know, heavy metals or oil and gas or something like that, you most likely will need, of course, some sort of level of Russian. And also, I mean, just living in the country, spending your life there, you miss out on so much if you don't learn the language, because it's just, I think you're doing yourself a disservice regardless.
Yeah, no, I always agree with that. But look, before we get into the hows of it, I do have a couple of questions. First of all, right now, and just to let you know, we're throwing things at you here, Ilya.
Please do.
There's a huge difference between Russia today and what Russia was 5 years ago. I know Russia was very up and coming 5 years ago. A lot of the millionaires have done EB5, so we're very familiar with how that has worked. But the war has taken its toll.
Have you seen that that's made a difference in individuals coming and wanting to move to Russia.
You mean difference as in cost of living?
Yes.
Right. So right now we're expecting, because of the war, that the cost of living must have jumped, that there perhaps isn't an appeal to newcomers. The war tends to do that. And how is the economic factor going on right now in Russia?
I think everybody was surprised. I mean, everybody was amazed in that sense because especially of course, my personal opinion, the whole thing was just a terrible mistake from everybody. It was a terrible miscalculation. And I think the Russian government overestimated its military power, while the Western kind of powers overestimated their economic power. What everybody find out is that probably the Russian military is not so strong, but the Russian economy is actually quite amazing. So what's kind of going on is a bit of a supernova going on, I would say. So the IT sector is growing by 10% per annum, real. Moscow is booming, and essentially what the whole sanctions just kind of was a blessing in disguise. And this is kind of what people tell us coming all the way to Russia. So let me give you a practical example. I mean, one of my friends, she's a venture capitalist, Harvard educated, everything else, right? She's right scoping up startups in Russia and just said it's a field kind of trip. I can do absolutely amazing evaluation because nobody likes them so far. So it's growing and it's going and it's kind of pushing. We have money coming in from China. We have essentially, I think it's been a very interesting lesson. Nobody believed that's going to happen. But now everybody kind of seeing, oh, actually, we can do this. We can pivot all the way from the West and kind of build out the trade towards India, China, and everything else. Because let's step back. Before everything went from New York, right? So Russian businessmen came to New York, and then the trade was done from the New York Stock Exchange. All kind of finance was there. Now everything starts to kind of connect and leaving US out. That's the reality. And this is actually what drives a lot of our clients to us as well. They see this coming. They work in finance in the West, and they don't want to be left out. They see the trend.
That's so interesting. I read just recently, all of the stuff going on about the tariffs, that one of the reasons for the tariffs is to try and pull everything back to the US, because there is a fear that 5 years from now, perhaps US is not the most important country in the world. And it could be this other little group. And also, Russia and India have traditionally had very good relationships.
No, I agree. And let's take a step back and just kind of look at Russia very calmly and see what it is. Currently, it's the number one economy in Europe by size. It's larger than Germany, and this is not Russian statistic. This is IMF and World Bank. It's the fourth largest economy in the world. This is by purchasing power parity, because the Russian ruble is undervalued, and you already see it. Actually, the Russian ruble is the best performing currency versus the US dollar this year, up 38%. It's amazing.
Well, Russia is a major player when it comes to RCBI, so they have the money.
Yes, of course. You have number one most natural resource in the world when it comes to the poor, 75 trillion of natural resources. Number one in natural gas reserves, right? And number one grain exporter in the world. So you have a country that is self-sufficient from the point of energy, largest landmass in the world, reaches from the point of resources, and it's located closest to the growing markets, which is Asia, right? You have India, you have China, you have the whole Southeast Asia that needs to consume all those resources. And the debt is like 15, I think, 16, 19% of GDP. So the debt level is very low, and it can be kind of paid back by the gold reserves. Now, Russia is going to right now borrow up from the actual money from China, because Chinese is not going to invest in the US bonds market, that's for sure. They've been scaling down. They are looking to somewhere to invest. They know they need to build up infrastructure from Russia to China, because of course they need all those reserves.
Yeah.
So we are looking at the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and this is not us coming saying this story. This is actually our clients that are very good in finance from the West coming to us and telling us this story. And we're like, why do you come to us? They say, well, this is what we see. And we want to be ahead of the train. While everybody hates it, we want to invest now.
Well, Ilya, you have some really good points. And I mean, some interesting facts that I'm learning
It's
on this
not it's not
podcast.
us. It's not us. It's our clients. We're like, oh, we are we're
Yeah.
just as surprised.
But I'm going to throw you a curveball because I know there's a community out there, the LGBTQ plus community. It seems that they're prohibited from coming in through these programs.
Well, I mean, let's kind of put it straight. This
Hmm.
is a really good question. And we actually get asked by some clients about it,
Yeah.
believe it or not. So the LGBTQ propaganda is prohibited in Russia. You
Okay.
could get to jail for that. And this is specifically if you target the kids.
What do you mean
So
by propaganda? You mean, explain what you mean by that.
so the Russian general kind of way is that as an adult you can do whatever you want,
Right.
right?
Okay.
But that type of education is not part of the school curriculum. So you'll never see a rainbow flag in Russian schools,
I
for
see.
better or worse,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Essentially, so your sexuality kind of, you can do whatever you want. And I can, if you want to, if you're curious, there's like speeches of Vladimir Putin on tape that says that like, so you can do whatever you want in the bedroom,
Hmm.
just don't promote things to kids, right?
Okay. Yeah, that clarifies it because it's not the community as a whole that you're against. It's just the propaganda and the teachings, I guess.
And there's like, I can tell you that there's a couple of artists in Russia that everybody knows they're gay. They are
Hmm.
kind of quite open about it every possible way, right? But I mean, there's like, it's not gonna be any. Well, you're not gonna see any transgender people educating in schools, right?
Hmm.
You're not gonna see any of those dances for the kids, right? And I don't know. Some people might like it. Some people want to have their kids educated that way. That's fine. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, that's not gonna happen in Russia. For better or worse, that's one of the attraction points from the point of some of our clients because they are fearful that the kids in the school will be educated on something without their approval or without their kind of consent. And I don't know if it's right or wrong. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what they are running away from, right? So, yeah,
I've heard this before, actually, this point. And look, beyond business, there's so many podcasts we can have just on Russian culture and
of course.
RCBI culture and lifestyle
Hmm.
appeal, because Russia is not the only country which has this attitude. But as time is short, let's just
Sorry.
we can keep on talking. And it's always a pleasure to speak with you, Ilya. I learn something every time. But what I would like to just quickly ask you, healthcare system, education, if you could
Of
let us
course.
know, how does that work?
So, first and foremost, when you become a resident in Russia, either you are temporary or permanent resident, you are eligible to the same healthcare as a Russian citizen, right? So, and the healthcare is free and it's actually getting quite better and better. It's especially good in Moscow. So, if you have small kids, the doctor will actually come to you to your home to check up on the kids
Right, right.
for free, right? The next day.
Hmm.
And this is why, I mean, Russia puts a lot of money into the promotion of the families and to check up on the kids. There's a whole thing about healthcare for the kids.
Hmm.
Now, besides that, there is, of course, the private healthcare option, which is extremely cheap if you compare it to US, of course. And we have clients coming from US and kind of going to Russia just for some sort of interesting operations that they need to perform. This is a new venture that we are kind of pushing, health in Russia. And we're going to launch it, I think, within a year or so. But what we see is that they come to Russia, they pay the prices, and they say, "Oh, goddamn, this is 10 times less than I would pay in the US," right? It's like
Yeah.
it's a steal, right? But still, you're gonna get very good quality healthcare. So I think it's getting better and better. Of course, I mean, healthcare in US is exceptional, but you're gonna pay an exceptional price as well, right?
That's true. You're so right. And for education, do you have a more private schools or are state schools good enough?
Both are. So they are private schools, especially I think what happened with after the sanctions and everything. Well, a lot of people that were Russian, they came back as well. They put their money back, and essentially they kind of rebuilt the whole thing. So that there's private schools that are very well oriented, multiple languages, curriculum from. I think they're just copycats from a lot of very good private schools. I think in the West as well. So they're kind of copying up a lot of things, but also integrating things from the East. So Chinese, a lot of math, a lot of kind of base science. Russia is generally quite good at mathematics, kind of base science and everything else. Probably not as good at, I don't know, marketing and things.
They do like the capitalist part of it. I do know that. So every time we go places, we were like, okay, if this was in America, we would have at least 3 dozen gift stores by now. Or, so I do notice that. But we can keep on talking about about the cultural differences and everything else. There's just so much to know and to learn. So thank you, Ilja, for all of that. But I'm sure all of our listeners want to know, well, okay, this sounds wonderful, but how much? How much is it going to cost me to move over to Moscow?
There are 2 actually quite new programs that are running. The one that has been launched only 2 years ago, which is the Golden Visa, that requires investment. And actually, you can say that, well, you need at least about $350,000 free, but you're going to get it back. Right, but that's kind of investment that you put in for 6 months into the stock market.
6 months only?
Yes.
Oh wow!
Wow.
And we are pushing the big caveat. It still requires you to pass the Russian language test. We are working very hard with the government to remove it. I hope we'll get some good news within 6 to 12 months. I think we're going to remove it, and then the floodgates will open. Until then, it's like, well, but if you're over 65, then Russian language is not required. So if you have the funds and you're over 65, then great, Russian retirement if you want. So that's the one thing, Golden Visa. Another kind of program that been launched 1 year ago is something called the Shared Values Visa, which actually doesn't require any investment. But you're only going to get a temporary residence permit for 3 years, but you don't need any Russian. We call it the Try Out Russia program. And yeah, it's kind of go to Russia, try it out for a couple of years. If you like it, then you can later convert to a permanent residency if you learn Russian. So we have kind of those 2 tracks, and people are exploring. Both are very new, and Russia is it's very new kid on the block. They're still learning. Lots of rules are not quite good, right? Lots of kind of things are clunky, but Russia, it's kind of a bit of like it's a bear in a shop. It's kind of very, not good at marketing.
Well, that's what I was saying. They're great at marketing, but they have the best vodka. So,
oh yeah, vodka. There's like, and we are so much looking forward to both of you. Mona, Rebecca, when you're next time in Russia, I will, of course, make sure that you go all the way up to St. Petersburg. It's amazing.
We can't wait for this war to end. We're going to be on the next flight. Ilja, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Global Investment Voice. A huge thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and sharing this journey with us. Curious about unlocking the potential of global migration and citizenship? Make sure to visit us online at mshallah.com and globalinvestmentvoice.com. Dive into our extensive library of podcast episodes. Stay ahead with the latest in migration news by signing up for our insider newsletter. Don't forget to connect with us on social media. Find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook to keep the conversation going. Remember, the insights shared in our podcast are for informational purposes only, so please seek tailored legal, financial, or investment advice where needed. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep investing smart and living well with Global Investment Voice. We'll see you on the next episode.